Our first speaker is John Willis, Loop on Twitter. And I guess it was a couple months ago in March, John had written an article around a topic that I thought, and I think most of us hopefully have read it. If you haven't, please go read it. But around burnout in the industry, around how the idea that we as a culture, we as a tribe, should be working ourselves to death. And it's important to recognize that this is a large problem, and John being here is going to be able to drop some knowledge on us and be able to walk us through, hopefully, some of these things, right, John?
We'll see how.
For those who don't know who John is, I first met John back in 2010 in Mountain View at one of the first DevOps days and was completely scared crapless of him. I was like, dude, this is John Willis. He's talking to me. And what I learned over time is that John has one of the most incredibly large hearts. He's very passionate, he's very empathetic, he's one of the best people who
I
will
wasn't going to
listen.
cry. I told Bridget, I'm not going to cry in this presentation, and you're already getting me started.
Yeah. Anytime you need a hug, anytime you need an ear to listen to, John has always been there for me, and I know he would do the same for anybody here. So if you get a chance, please have a conversation with him outside of this presentation and get to know him a little bit. But he's a wonderful individual, and I'm glad you could be here to talk. So I'm going to let you take it away. Help me welcome John.
Thank you. I'm kind of somewhat famous for the person who's been the most DevOps days on the planet, and that actually was the best intro that anybody's ever given me, Mike. Thank you. All right, so the hardest thing I'm going to do this morning is actually pronounce this word, and then the rest should actually be easy. Karōjisatsu, I believe, in plain English, burnout is killing us. How many people have read the blog article? Oh, good. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay, that's way more than I thought. Okay. So let's go through this story. So I'm Karōjisatsu. I work for Docker now. Enough about that.
Docker.
Yeah, we don't. There's no. That's it. There is no Docker in my presentation. How about that? The first presentation on the planet doesn't have the word Docker in it. So karaoke. I actually found out about this word from a good friend of mine, Stephen Nelson Smith, Lord Cope. One of the original DevOps folks. There was about 30 or 40 of us that were in Ghent, and about 2 years ago he was giving a presentation at DevOps Tel Aviv, and it was kind of loosely like we're working too hard, and I was like, blah blah blah. And about 10 minutes into it, he said, yeah, last year was a tough year. I really thought about committing suicide. My heart freaking dropped. And the whole room was like, because you got to know Stephen. I mean, he's like written test-driven development for Chef. I mean, he's an awesome person. And I went up to him like, hold on, please, like, if you're ever going to have those stories, call me. Didn't think about it for a while. But then this blog article made me rethink about it. So this is a term that the Japanese culture, right? If you remember, if you understand like lean and even Deming lean, and you think about going into the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, their passion for defects got so crazy that like this stuff started happening. Literally they came up with a new word like death from overwork, and then there's actually, if you look at the Wikipedia, it actually talks about this Karōjisatsu, which is where people actually commit suicide. And everybody's seen the movie Gun Ho, right? Like the Michael Keaton and I dishonor my company if I have defects. So I wonder if like we're not doing that, at least to our young people right now in Silicon Valley, and we're having that kind of, am I dishonoring? And we have pretty amazing responsibilities. I do a DevOps podcast with Damon Edwards, and we were talking about like this article, and we think about like Uber, right? Like I love Uber. Like I was in Budapest last week, and I got Uber in Budapest. Like that's like weird to say, right? But but imagine like you are somebody who runs the ops infrastructure there, and like your mission is to eliminate yellow cabs, right? I don't know. I mean, again, I wonder, like, we're doing amazing stuff, Etsy and these places. Most of you people I know are building amazing infrastructure. Are we being conscious of, like, are we falling into that same trap that the Japanese culture did? So disclaimer, I'm not a professional. These are just my thoughts, my feelings. just the best I can do is listen. I'll buy you a drink, you buy me a drink, I don't know. So this is where to me it all started, right? Like soak this guy in for a second. Just look at him. His name's Carlo Flores. And I didn't even really know him. There are certain people I know, like in certain cities, like Mike. I know Dave very well. I know Peter. But this is one of the people that I meet every time I go to this one conference every year at Scale. It's a Linux conference in LA. And I've been going there for like 6 years now. In fact, my first conference was 2 weeks after I started as chef, and I gave my first chef presentation there. In fact, it was the first chef presentation there. And over the last couple of years, I've gotten to meet this guy. And every time I meet him, there's just this fun, respectful, like we should have been friends for life. But then we don't see each other for another year. So that's Carlo Flores. So this is another picture. On the right-hand side is a gentleman called Chris Weber. He's one of the local LA DevOps folk. So at Scale in February this year, I happened to see him at breakfast, and we were sitting down, and he says, "Do you hear about Carlo?" And I'm really bad with faces and names. And I'm like, "No, what?" He says, "He committed suicide." And I was like, and at that point I was like, oh, that's tragic, one of our young people. But I didn't really realize who it was. And so I just kind of left it, and then I went to the opening session. And the guy in the middle, Lars Lenton, was doing the opening session, kind of like with Mike. And he says, look, can we all take a moment of silence? And he throws up his Carlos Twitter page. And I'm starting to get this eerie feeling. I'm like, oh no, please, God, don't let it be that young man. And so I go and look at his LinkedIn profile. I'm literally racing now to see, is it that person? Because last year I was having this hour-and-a-half conversation about how to do a startup with him. And not that we were going to start up together, but I was trying to give him advice on startups. And I realized, before I even could get to the pitch, I'm like, of course it's him. He would have been here. I would have saw him. And so, I fucking lost it, right? I really did. I was in the back of the room. I had to go out in the hall, call my wife. I'm like blubbering, crying. Because it just hit me so, because I had the Steven Nelson Smith thing. And then I had one other thing that hit me. So about 6 years ago, I moved to Atlanta. This is all in the blog article. Most of you probably, I'm repeating it. But about 6 years ago, I moved to back to Atlanta, and I started a local cloud group. And there was this other young man named Walter, and I'll never forget his name. And we went ahead. He got offered to go to Valdosta University, which is like a 3-hour drive, because he wanted me to do a presentation on cloud to the CS department. So he drove 3 hours down. We talked about the industry, Atlanta, good stuff. On the way back, we talked about life. We talked about Roman history. We talked about civilization. He told me about his dad. I told him about my dad and my relationship. 2 months later, I get a call from his business partner. He committed suicide. And I was like, the same thing, I'm not an expert in this. I have limited knowledge in this. But you have this God, I wish I could have been there. If I could have just said one thing. Grab the shirt. Pull, right? And so I had to, so actually, I lost it for that day. It kind of ruined my weekend. I made the best of it. Went home, life, kids, work, soccer. Actually, it was right, it was actually very stressful because actually we were just going through the acquisition of the company that got acquired there. And Brandon Burton on the left there posted this picture Thursday after the conference, the next following week, and then I just lost the version too. Because if some of you know, the guy right next to Brandon is Gene. And I'm a dear friend with Gene, and Gene always talks about, we need to make the helping millions of IT professionals have better lives. That's his goal in life, right? And I'm putting this all together. I got to write a blog article. I have to write this blog article. So I wrote the blog article, and it started from Steven Nelson Smith's kind of Karoshi, and then I found out about this idea, and I go into a lot of detail here. But this is my favorite Edmund Munch picture. It's called Red Virginia Creeper. And the reaction to that blog article is if you understand this picture, it's a stranglehold on the house, right? It's like strangling the and that's, my God, I knew we had burnout was an issue here, but I had no idea that in my little view of it, that I would get hit so hard with the reaction. It was 70 comments in about 3 days. And in the grand scheme of big viral things, that means nothing. But in my little view of the world, this was insane. 1,200 retweets or tweets. People sending me emails. I got 40 emails in 3 days from people either I was convinced hated me. There's not a lot of them. There's a couple though. Or don't like me. Hate is a strong word. There are people I love and people I don't know. In fact, the majority of people I don't know. And everyone was like, John, I'm going to tell you this story. And like I was like, oh my God, you? It was a bunch of Stephen Nelson Smiths that I've got these saying like, let me tell you about 3 years ago or 10 years ago. So I did and then one other thing. That weekend, we actually, because one of the last things I said, the whole reason I wrote the blog article was like, if there's somebody I know, I was thinking about, and I know it's like Pollyanna, and it's like, it's not that simple, but I wanted to just say fucking out loud that if you know me, and you're thinking about this, and again, I know it's not that simple, but fuck it, call me. And what happened was, like hundreds of other people said the same thing. Oh, call me too. Call me too. And that weekend, somebody basically on a comment said, I've had it, I'm going to end it. And there were 3 or 4 of us, Gene, myself, and Brandon, and a couple other people, spent a whole day working with this person. In fact, Gene is still working with this person. Right? So me and Gene did a little bit of a postmortem. And so Gene said, we had to do more with this. Like it was an unplanned outage, if you will, right? We had to figure out like what we couldn't just let this die. So I said, okay, I'm gonna, go through all the emails. I got sent lots of links, lots of positive, hey John, have you met this person? And got to meet some really interesting people I've never met. And the 2 things, in my kind of simplistic boiling it down was that, and this is obvious, but maybe it's not too obvious as a group, like we really stink at our feelings. Somebody walks in with a cast on a skiing trip, like we all run over to sign it, right? But if it's depression, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get coffee, right? Like we really are not good at like listening, and that's the second point. We're really not that good at listening, and I'm the worst. And because we're fixers, right? Like our first instinct is to fix things. You tell me a problem, I'm going to try to fix it. Well, and sometimes these people the fix is to just listen, right? So one of the persons I got introduced to this, Geek Clickguard, I'm bad at names, but I have a link to some of her presentations. She's got, like somebody's like early on in the tweet streams, like you have to meet this person. And I watched some of her videos. She's a German agile coach, and she has some things on burnout. And so just to pull an Adam Jacob there, Epictetus' revised view, or people are disturbed. Back then they said men for everything. So I think, this quote I think is, as I research things, I like people are disturbed not by the things but by the view. So the third kind of point is we're really bad at our own feelings. I'm really bad at my own feelings. This is a great example of this cartoon. Like I'll give a presentation and I'll have like lots of people come. If there's one that I nail, and some of them I really suck at, but most I do pretty well. And I'll people come up and say, that was really good. Oh, that was awesome. But then there's somebody on the live stream will complain that I mixed the A in cap theorem or something, and just tear me a new one. And like that middle one is like, that's the one I remember all day long. By the time I'm ready to go to bed, I'm just in a shitty mood. And I'm actually kind of rude to my wife, and actually, this has been a problem with me in my life. I mean, I've had little things ignore me where the next thing I don't even realize that I'm being crappy to a lot of people I love. And actually, there's a good book, and I've got a link to this. It's called Feeling Good to New Mood Therapy, and actually by this David Burns. It's kind of corny, and I'm not even suggesting this for you. This is something I did. But you do checklists at the end of every day. And you actually correlate all the feelings. And what you find out is somebody gave you the finger in a car in the morning is why you're having this drop-down fight with your wife. Like, holy crap, like I wish I would have known that. I probably wouldn't have had that fight. So some of the other research I did, I found is this kind of learning zone. So, and I thought it was really appropriate for DevOps, because there's a lot of tie-ins here. Like there's this kind of discussion of there's 3 zones. There's a comfort zone, a learning zone, and a danger zone. Okay. Well, comfort zone, like if you've read Gene Kim's book, the original book is by Elliot Gorak, The Goal. He talks about drum, buffer, rope, slack, putting slack in our life. How about slack? How about the Kanban for life, right? I don't know. Like the comfort zone is we have to step into this kind of smell the roses, and the problem is like, and I'm guilty of this. I'll use words like Kaizen, and you guys, wow, he said, cool, Japanese term, Kaizen, and Kata, right? Like, and that's good stuff. Like that's what we do. We're really awesome, right? But the problem is if we're always in that kind of Kaizen, we run the risk of being in that danger zone. And when we don't know it, we're actually not in a good place. We're not really learning. So we have to, the goal here is to basically kind of figure out how to basically move from that learning zone, that Kaizen, to force ourselves back into the comfort zone. Get that refresh. Meditation, yoga, whatever, right? I mean, and recognize that 100% Kaizen is not going to be good. And this same gentleman that did the research is Kenneth Shannon. He asked okay, can you pick the zones, right? And it's pretty easy, right? The one under the tree is pretty easy, right? It's on the shade, watching the waves. The one in the middle is actually, if you go with me, probably going out a little further each time, maybe learning how to body surf, right? Not going crazy. And the knucklehead on the right, or left again, is the one who has to go out the farthest. I can go out way farther than everybody else. And I actually, although I don't look like it, I lived on Long Island. I grew up on Long Island. I was a lifeguard at Smith's Point, right? Like, so it's a notorious beach for riptides, right? And these are the folks that get caught in that riptide. So metaphorically, that's what might be happening to some of our young people. We feel that we're like have to be so awesome, which we do, and we like being awesome, that we don't realize when we cross over. So, in my research, again, like I'm not a professional. I mean, what were my takeaways from Gene's ask? Like we definitely need to talk. And what's cool is I was at Interop earlier in the week, and they did a luncheon on burnout. So there were like 30 of us at Interop, right? Like I get DevOps caring about burnout and let's do some sessions, but like Interop was like the staunchest network architectures. And everybody's complaining why only 30. I'm like, you kidding me? 30 at Interop? Like, these people like feelings? And I'm being nasty. It's like, show me the pack it in, pack it out. So, but like it's talking. At DevOps Paris a few weeks ago, we had 70 people in a burnout session, right? Just opening up and talking. And in fact, it was hilarious. Like, as open spaces go, guess where we wound up? If anybody get this, free dinner tonight. It's a hard one to get to. Why Scrum is evil. I'm not kidding you. And it was like, that's the beauty of an open space, right? Like, it just goes where it goes. And
Andrew wasn't even there.
I know, and Andrew wasn't even there. That's right, yeah, good catch, yeah. And then listening, just being really good at listening, and shutting up, like just listen. I think being vulnerable. So this Kligard, has some really good videos. And one of her videos is brilliant. She says she loves to be silly. And so one of the things she loves to do is manually open automated doors. All right, sounds good. So she's doing this, and then they had this new employee from Asia, didn't really understand the culture as much, wasn't good at the language. He'd watch her every day. And about the third day, he goes up to her and says, I know you know that those doors don't automatically open, but why do you keep opening them manually? And then she explained to him how she was silly and she liked being silly. A couple of days later, he started coming up to her and asking her a whole bunch of other questions about other things, like, why during the holidays do you all put trees in your house? But the point was, she made herself vulnerable. And there was nobody else probably who was going to ask all these like cultural weird oddities to him. And in a sense, why did I get 100 emails from like 80 of them that people I didn't know? It's because I made myself vulnerable. So I think it's a gift. Like, I mean, I don't mean you got to be silly all the time. I'm probably over silly, but I mean, I think that like we walk around and there's a lot of people that we meet that are like, Mike was saying that, about me, but like all of us, we're like, oh my God, John Oswald, and he's amazing, right? But like we need to make sure that we, if we want to play this game of helping people, not that people don't want to consciously do that. I mean, maybe thinking about being vulnerable, being courageous, right? It takes a lot of guts to talk about, things about your feelings, right? It's hard. It's still kind of that plague, again, the broken leg, right? Like we dig it actually. Wow, you broke your leg at this particular resort, right? Like we don't like, and then here's the thing, like being kind, a compliment, right? It costs $0. Mike, you're fucking awesome. Catherine, you're awesome. Dave's not here. He's awesome. Peter's not awesome. Like that's so cheap, and it's so true. It's like a freebie that we can give, right, to people. Maybe people think I over compliment, but I never give compliments when we're not married. But I like complimenting people, and I can't imagine it hurts. So what were some of my observations here? I think me and Gene talked about, so that suicide watch was really freaky. And this gentleman who's going to probably watch this. So I went back, and at first he was just a comment, and then he showed up on Twitter. And turns out he was a misogynist. Just everything about him was like somebody I didn't want to be around. And I realized, that I don't get to choose, I raised my hand, I said I could help, right? And so I had to really, soul search, some of the conservative views that this gentleman, and that by itself is not, but you tie that with somebody who clearly had racist comments and just everything about it. I was like, these are not the kind of people I'd like to be around in my life, not even close, right? But it was hard because, one, we couldn't get through. Everything was, yeah, so what? I'm still going to kill myself. And then, me and Gene talked about it, and it was like, yeah, there are these 1%ers that the best thing you can do, so you don't dive into this thing, and this is in some of the videos I watch, is to just navigate them to a professional. And in all cases, navigate a person to a professional. But on these ones, you got to be real careful for your own soul. And then there's the kind of, and these are my numbers and Gene's, we were just playing with so you got to pick numbers. 95 is a good cutoff point. And then 4%, the rest of us. And maybe Carlo was in that 4%. I don't know. Right? And they're the ones that we can do a really good game of listening. And in fact, as I was going through this morning, I'm thinking about the Kinevin, right? Maybe the 1%ers are the chaotic, and then the 4%ers are complexity, and the rest of us, kind of floating and simple and complicated, right? Did I do good? Where's my Kinevin guy? Yeah, did all right? But yeah, right? What do you got to do in the 1% is know, I got to get you to a professional. Maybe I take you there. Maybe I drive you. I don't know. Gene was, I'm going to run out of time. I know this. All the things I want to say and I can't. But Gene's a millionaire, right? And he's on a Saturday. He's got 2 kids like myself. A little later in life, not as late as me with the kids. So, I like to spend a lot of time with my kids when I'm not traveling. And here's Gene on a Saturday calling me and saying, we need to work on this. I've got to give that kids a bath. Can you take over for the next hour? And I'm like, Gene, I'm like, my kids are screaming at me. I've been gone 3 weeks in a row. And he's like, okay, I'll take over now. And then when we got to the whole point of at one point I told Gene, I said, I don't know if I can, I know I put I put it out there that I want to help people, but this person scares me. And Gene's like, John, here's my deal to you. Somebody scares you, send them to me. I'll take over. I don't worry about that stuff. I worry about everything. So Gene is still, at one point, Gene was having a dialogue with this person. He said, I can't get a job, can't do this. Gene said, I'll do a mock interview with you. Gene did a mock interview with her 2 weeks later. So anybody thinks Gene is an amazing person, you're so wrong. And anytime I can get Winston Churchill in a DevOps presentation, I think this is my first. He coined the phrase "big black dog," and I won't go into it. Like, there's some really good, interesting about his battle with depression in World War II and his battle with Hitler. I mean, some really interesting stuff there. But the reason I bring that out is the World Health Organization has created a couple of really good videos, and I got these again from this ClickGuard woman who kind of pointed me to these. The first one is really for somebody who battles with depression, and it's very cartoonish, but it's this idea of this big dog that just kind of like you're stuck to, or every once in a while stepping on your feet, and it's like 10x bigger than you, and it's the depression, and it just puts you in the, like, you wake up and you're like not great, and I tend to do this too, I'll do one minor catharsis. I clearly overeat every once in a while, then I lose much weight, then I gain weight, and when I'm in this zone, everybody's a fucking idiot. Not y'all, but the guy sitting next to me on the plane sits down, I'm like, what a fucking idiot. Why did I do that? And then later on he starts talking to me, I'm like, oh man, I was so wrong, he's so awesome. But I do that. I tend to have this black dog of my kind of things that are bugging me, make me be irritable and less, you want to talk about the saint on this planet, it's my wife who puts up with me. But this is a great video for that. It talks about some things like keeping a mood journal. It talks about mindfulness, meditation, yoga. In the end, for people who have ever battled, and I'm so glad the next presentation is about anxiety, because that's another thing I have battled heavily with. Some of these things for people who have had these forms of depression, or these, they don't go away. In the black dog scenario, you get it to a point where you're training it and controlling it. And then the second video is for the caregivers of the people that you want to help. And it's really good because it does a lot. It gives you a lot of do's and don'ts. So if people say, I like what John said, man, I need to be more open. I need to make sure. I've had guys tell emails from people who said, hey, I manage a team. I'm going to make them all read this blog article. Right? So there's a lot of people I want to help. And if we're going to help, let's do it right. And some of the things you don't do is say, it's all in your head. Not a good thing to say. Don't say man up. Right? I think most of us in this room would never do that. But little things there were people way worse than you. These are really bad things. That's compounds. In fact, on Monday we had that interop thing, and they invited a pastor who was a suicide prevention in Vegas. Imagine, talk about a bad job, tough job in Vegas. He gave some stats on suicide in Vegas. It was insane, right? And as you can imagine. And near the end, he didn't say anything during the whole presentation. Near the end, he said, okay, I heard what you said, let me give you some input. And it was really good input. And the one takeaway that I loved, that still kind of, I'm trying to get my head around is, he said most people think when they detect somebody is, this is not in the video, this is from this pastor, when they're somebody they're concerned about, a loved one or a friend or a good close friend or coworker, and they think, well, they're in this kind of danger zone. Your instinct is not to say, are you thinking about committing suicide? Because then you're afraid that, oh my God, they're going to race off and do it. Or, for me, it's and I thought, I might have thought that too, but I wouldn't have a problem saying it, other though, if I knew somebody kind of well, and I knew they were bad, I'm it's that courage, right? Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid, right? Keep saying, do it, you gotta do it. Because what happens is it sets a level oh, you understand me. So it's kind of counterintuitive. So anyway, this video is good. It talks about grow your ears, open your heart, listen without judgment. And then, I think that happiness thing is real. That's happiness science, right? The Constitution only gives people the right to pursue happiness. You have to catch it, or it's a skill. I rewatched the movie Happy last night, so I'm sorry I didn't make it. I slept till about 6:30 to the party last night, getting old. And I wanted to watch this again one more time, this Happy. It's on Netflix, just called Happy. It's the science of happy. It actually talks about Karōjisatsu and all that stuff too. It's interesting. Again, you can spend another half an hour, 45 minutes talking about some of the happiness science, which sounds pretty good to me. So special thanks to some of these people I kept referencing. Git Guard, I think I'm pronouncing her, Native Wired, I have links to, I'll put this up, actually I already posted it, but I'll tweet out during next break. Josh Corman is interesting. He doesn't talk about like hardcore, a burnout survey for IT sec. Like, think about that. IT security and a burnout survey. Like, it doesn't get any rougher than that. And obviously Gene is just a genuine human being. David Burns is one of the books that's helped me in my life. Jennifer Davis has some really good presentations on hero worship. Really good. I went back and watched a lot of those when I first started putting this thing together. And that's Brandon Burton on the right. He's kind of my soul of LA. He's a beautiful young man. Some of the videos, the first two are the Black Dog videos. That third one is the one from the Kliegard. I'm sorry, I just keep mangling her name, but Stress and Depression. It's great. She's funny. It's just an enjoyable video to watch. She just it was so refreshing after writing that article. It was so refreshing to. Thanks for that. Good. I thought I was way over, and I got 4 minutes left. How do you like that? This is the last slide, by the way. That video is just it was just so to be in the middle of that storm, that red Virginia creeper, if you will, and then somebody saying you have to watch our video. And I watched her video and I was like, God, it was just, she was funny. She just, I can't imagine that you wouldn't watch it and just enjoy it. And she has another one, Be Brave. The From Here to Zero is Jennifer Davis. There's the Burnout and InfoSec from Josh Corman. I'm not going to recommend therapy books to people. No. But that one was very helpful for me for that same Epictetus quote where I wind up being really rotten and nasty to other people that I shouldn't be because somebody was rotten and nasty to me who I really will never see again in my life. Right? And then the movie Happy is it's a little gift, especially if you have Netflix. It's free. That's it. Thank you. I hope I kind of stirred some stuff up. I mean, the biggest thing we can do with my extra 2 minutes is the conversation. Be bold. If you've got a story to share, then, share it with people, right? Because what happens inevitably is so I had you could talk about anxiety, right? Early in my life, I had bouts with anxiety. And one of the things you actually start thinking is that you're the only one that has this. Right? And then when you hear that, oh, you had that too. Okay. Well, then maybe I'm not that crazy or freaky right? So anyway, thank you for letting me talk about this morning. I love you all.
So we have a little time for questions if anyone has questions. John?
Sure. I'm not a professional.
Question. I think in our industry, a lot of people do feel like they have to be perfect or at least better. Bulletproof, exactly. How do you get past that and work towards being okay with being vulnerable?
It's hard, right? Because one of the things. I've had recently good experience with VCs. I spent 25 years with failed startups and pretty much hating VCs. In the last 2 years, I actually kind of think I still hate them, but I appreciate what they've done for me. But that they set a really bad tone. It starts in the epicenter of Silicon Valley. That starts this in fact, a lot of the emails that I got from people were this, John, especially the young people. I'm going to tell you a story, but you have to promise me, almost all caps, that you don't tell anybody, because I'll never get hired again. How do you fight that, right? And the only way we fight it is we just fight it.
Put your Twitter down, everybody. Let's hear it.
Yeah. We fight it, right? Because it's either, a lot of us are work for companies that are very driven by investments, and investments are looking for big yields, and hell, look who I work for, right? How do you stop that? But the beauty is, I'm 56, and I've had 4 careers now. This is my 4th career. Shouldn't have gave me any time. The 4th career here, and this has been a gift because I've gotten to meet people like Bridget, all these young, beautiful people who not only are technically insanely savvy, but think about the world and life and care. Like Bridget is like some of the things that Bridget has done for me. Like is understand how I'm not an evil, misogynist person, but I have a history of things I never even thought about that I did. And I remember Bridget talking about this is the last thing, and I promise I'll shut up. Talking after one DevOps Days where a bunch of people said, hey, why don't us ops guys go to dinner? And she wrote this blog article about how she just felt like really shitty. Being 2 days at a great fucking event like this. Contributing, I remember when she was there, it was like she gave a presentation and she was awesome. Hey, the Bridget was president now, making her cry. And like, I'm like, oh my God, if I ever do that to Bridget, I don't feel so fucking shitty. And so I love the fact that I've gotten to meet a lot of you, and I'm going to Austin next week, and there's a whole crowd over there that I love, and so like there's hope because we have some really passionate people in this thing we call DevOps. Thanks again, everybody.